Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our beginning iPhone development, iPad development, learning Objective-C. For those of you that are attending live, if you can raise your hand in the GoToWebinar control panel, so make sure I got everything configured correctly, and we will get started. This is also being recorded. We are doing this every week at 6:30 Pacific time on Wednesday nights. If you'd like to attend and are seeing this on the YouTube, you can just go to my website, excelme.com, click on the free videos tab, and you can see the upcoming chapters, the dates that we're going to be covering it. This is 2011, 2012, and then as well as the old postings from the previous weeks. They all, usually within 24 hours, they're posted on YouTube. They're 10 to 15 minutes long. As well. And if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, every time I upload a new video, you get notified. And it's all the directions are on there how to do it. All right, so it's been about a month or so since I've done these because I was hoping that the book, our second edition of Objective-C for Absolute Beginners, would have been out, but it took about an extra month or so for the editors to get it to print. It is now available by ebook, Kindle, Mobi, and PDF. From A-Press and from Amazon, and it should be available at your local bookstores, and hard copy from Amazon and Barnes & Noble should be available hard copy in the next week or so. Actually, any day, I'm told. So anyway, let's get started. So we're going to start off with Chapter 1 in the book, and we're just going to go through it. I'm going to pick out a topic, and at the end of the 10 or 15 minute live tutorial, I'll take questions from anyone that's attending live and be able to answer any questions regardless if it's in the chapter or some other iPhone project that you're working on, iPad project. Really the purpose of this is to get you interested, allow and build up over time a pretty substantial inventory of tutorials that are on YouTube covering all different topics that students typically have issues from. Obviously, I cover a lot more detail in my courses at excelme.com, and you can see the courses right here on the different topics. They're every Monday and Wednesday night for the iPhone iPad courses, and Tuesdays and Thursdays for the iPhone game programming courses. So tonight we're going to be covering some points from Chapter 1, which is basically an introduction on how to become an iPhone programmer. And the most important point I tell anybody interested in development, they always ask, is this something I can do? Can I do this? Am I smart enough? And I'm like, are you kidding? You're the only one that's going to tell yourself you can't do this. What do you want to put into it? You will get the information from me in order to be able to do whatever you want to do on the iPhone, the iPad, or the Mac. But there is a learning curve, and it does take time, and it takes practice. And the more you put in, the more that you get out of it. I will cover the information, but the more that you can spend programming and fixing and debugging your code, the better that you'll get. And I'll take you through how to do that. Just got to be patient with yourself. And sometimes it's very frustrating. There's times I do this for a living every day. There's times I want to throw my laptop out the window. We just get frustrated, but you get through it. Okay, so thinking like a developer. I tell people, most people when they start off iPhone, iPad developing, they have an idea for an app. They got an idea for an app, and they want to learn how to do the development, how to write code. Well, I tell everybody, just because you're a carpenter doesn't mean that, and you have a hammer, doesn't mean everything looks like a nail. That doesn't mean that the way you're going to solve your app is to code. You need to think about how you're going to lay out your application, what screens that you're going to take somebody through, and we're going to talk about different programming tools and non-programming tools that allow you to think through an app so that when it's done, you have a pretty integrated app that's easy to navigate. It's easy for the person to intuitively look at and understand how to use, and enjoy, and hopefully recommend to friends, and they'll buy it or use it, and you'll make a lot of money from it. But it requires a certain discipline, and we're going to talk about that. Just going through and taking what you want to do and breaking it down. Different modeling tools that I'll recommend. This one here is by OmniGraffle. I mocked this up before I started programming on it for this bank. Wood Forest Bank, I used a modeling tool and didn't require any code. It's kind of like Visio for the Mac, and I laid out my application. There's a lot of these applications out there. And then I could have users look at the application before I started coding to tell me if this is what they were looking at, this is what they wanted. These were the mock-ups that were done months before the app actually appeared on the App Store. Okay, the software development cycle is obviously design. Lay out your application, even if it's on a piece of paper, using a piece of paper and a pencil. Lay out your application. Take it to people. Get feedback from them. Did you cover all the screens? Are the buttons in the right position? If the keyboard comes up, will it overlay your view? Will you, do you have your text buttons up high enough so that when the keyboard pops up, it's not covering your text box? If it is, you got to shift it up. Just things that you really don't think through until you start designing your application. Then coding it. Then, of course, you got to test it. And it's just not you testing it. You have to get other people out there testing. I'll go through different testing and deployment tools that you can roll out your app up to 100 people using some great free tools out there like a TestFlight app to send out provisioning profiles in the apps to. And I cover all that in the courses as well. And then debugging, because you're going to have bugs. If you write lines of code, you're going to have bugs. The best line of code that you'll ever write, and the safest line of code of code that you'll ever write, is the line of code that you don't write. Everything else you got to debug and maintain. And then after you debug it, you're going to come back and have to fix some design issues, recode, test, and go through the circle. But eventually you got to make some money, or whoever's paying you to write this app wants to make some money and stop paying you. So you got to release it. You got to get your app out, and there's always compromises there in doing that because the app is never perfect, despite what the developer wants. And so I take you through learning how to think like a developer and design your application, and then we're going to talk tonight about different object-oriented programming terminologies. In order to write iPhone applications, you have to learn Objective-C. Objective-C is an object-oriented programming language. So we need to learn some terms. The first term is an object. We're going to manipulate objects. An object, quite simply, is something that you can act upon, something your code or the user can act upon. Here we have some different objects. We have the scene, which is a moon scene here. This is used in the Alice learning tool that we use to teach programmers how to program, and without having to learn a complex IDE, interactive development environment like Xcode, where we can focus on learning what methods and objects are and how to apply and apply properties to them. And so here I got, again, I got a space scene in the background. I have two different objects here. Here's two different fighters that are out. And I may have other objects out there like phasers might be another type of object. So anything that you can apply action to is an object. We're going to learn about the state of an object. Basically, if you were to snap your fingers at any point in time, what does that object look like? Is the object banking 30 degrees? Is it flying at 500 miles an hour? Does it have its landing gear up or down? That's all the state of the object at that particular point in time. 2 minutes later, snap your fingers again. What's the state of that object? Well, now it's banked right, and the flaps are down, and it's flying at 100 miles an hour. All right, so that's the state of an object. And when we look at the state of an object, we're going to see what its properties are. Like I just mentioned, bank, landing gear, speed, altitude are all properties that belong to an object, and we want to look at that at various points in time in our application. And of course, the IDE, the Integrated Development Environment, is Xcode. You have to have a Mac, an Intel-based Mac, running Xcode, which you can download for free from the Mac App Store, in order to write iPhone applications. You can't do it on a PC. You have to do it on an app. On a Mac, not an app, on a Mac, to write your applications. We're going to learn how to use Xcode, very complex. Make sure when you buy the book, it's got this little red tab up here if you're going to be using my book. And we're going to go through, tonight was kind of chapter 1. I'm going to take questions at the end of it, either on code or anything that you've read in chapter 1. And then we're going to pick up chapter 2 next Wednesday night. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail on programming. We're going to learn about some of the programming basics, variables, objects, methods, instance variable, inheritance, polymorphism, all in chapter 1. And then on the 21st, we're going to get into a pretty advanced section for those of you that are more familiar with Xcode and iPhone development. We're going to get into storyboarding with Interface Builder, which is new in iOS 5, which allows us to lay out in a visual manner our scenes, our views, from one view or one scene to the next. And you can model it and save yourself a lot of code and having to code a lot of properties and transitions. All right, well, those of you that are listening to on YouTube, I appreciate it. Again, make sure that you visit xlme.com and click on the free videos tab to see what was going on, and subscribe to my channel, and you'll get the automatic alerts whenever I upload the videos. And of course, you can click on the instructions on my homepage in order to attend the live webinars, which are every Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. Thanks a lot, and I'll now take questions from those that are attending live and stop the recording for those that are on YouTube.